Hi friends, Andrew Carruthers here, Education Director for Sanvia, and today we are going to show you how to create a curtain fringe with horizontal sections. We've shown you how to do these layered fringes with vertical sections. Sam has a video where he shows how to create a reverse graduation, which is really cool, where you create a stationary guide, and we'll link to those in the box below. Now, what we want to do today is we want to do it in a little different way. We're going to take horizontal sections and we're going to create a little bit of a guide in the perimeter first, because sometimes what we need to know is how does the horizontal portion of the shape affect what's happening around the face. And if we go in and do the layers first, sometimes we don't necessarily have as much control over that. So what we're gonna do is we first blow dried her into a nice natural state. We're going to just take the hair and we're just gonna give it a blouse. And what that blousing does is it tends to show us where does that hair naturally want to split and live more in the fringe versus in the sides of the haircut. And the mannequin heads sometimes are a little deceiving on this, you know, and the natural hair on your client's head will be more accurate as far as when you do that blouse, it's really going to show you where the hair wants to split and where it either wants to go more towards the back or it wants to stay forward. Then we're going to go ahead and clip those sides out of the way. And we'll do it again here on her left-hand side. Grab the hair in the recession area and just give it a blouse, and it'll just naturally kind of open itself to where it wants to live. Now, when we did this blow dry, we were really careful to wrap dry the hair back and forth, so that way we make sure that we're not putting some type of parting into the hair that doesn't actually exist in there. So as you're working with your blow dries, just be conscious that you're not influencing the hair to live somewhere that it doesn't want to live, because if your guest gets home and it's cut that way, then when they blow dry it and it doesn't go back to that exact same point, it's not going to fall correctly. So we're going to take just a skinny little, maybe ½ inch thick section within this fringe area. So the fringe is coming from the high point to those recession areas. We're using our dry cutting sectioning clips to keep things out of the way. The little urethane band in there is going to really help to make sure that we don't put a crease in the hair. Since it's dry, it's really susceptible to creasing. All right, so first step is we are going to take the hair and we are going to brace it into the comb, and then we are going to create our outline. Now, again, before, what we've told you is layer the hair first, then come back and put in your outline. When you have maybe a face shape or even a hair texture that it's really crucial that you get a really perfect outline here, then it's time to maybe put your outline in first, and that's why we would do this instead. We'll start here from the center. We're going to take the shears and just slide it under the hair so that we can let the hair drop into the wide teeth of the comb there. That's going to be able to allow us to give it just a little bit of elevation off the skin, but also keep it really low and as close to natural fall as possible. We're using the 6 1/4 inch streamline shear. This shear is a really good size for this because it's enough blade length to get a nice point cut, a nice notching through there without being a huge shear in the hand. So again, brace it into the wide teeth of the comb. We'll come through, and we want it just maybe to dust her eyebrow. So we're gonna cut just a little on the longer side than we think we need to at first. And this is something that we always encourage people to do, especially if you're a younger stylist, is always start with the hair a little on the long side. Because a lot of times what'll happen is you're gonna cut that first section and then you're gonna let it drop. And especially with that little bit of curvature to the forehead, it's gonna drop down and you're gonna go, oh, I thought I was cutting long, but actually that's pretty much exactly the length that I want, which it's about there. I'm gonna just dust a tiny bit more off of those ends. So again, we're gonna pick that up, drape it into the wide teeth of the comb. You can see I'm just doing that center area first before the forehead starts to curve and turn away from me. and just trim a little bit more off of that. So we're not doing huge peaks and valleys because we don't want this to be excessively chewy. We want it to be just really soft and loose through the perimeter. Now we'll start to create our curvature down into the cheekbone area. So again, now we're gonna come into the right-hand side, drape into the comb, and we'll allow the comb to give us our shape. So allow the angle of the comb to tell you, okay, that's the angle that I want to cut down here. Now, the comb can't curve, but I do want this to have a little bit of curvature to it. So I will follow that angle and just add a little bit of a curvature as I'm coming down around to the cheekbone. And as we're notching in with the points of the shears, we're giving it a little bit of an angle to the hair, but not a real steep angle, because if I go too steep, it's gonna feel too chewy for me. All right, so that's just about right. It's just at the bottom edge of her lowest point of her brow, kind of dusting the tips of her eyelashes there. And especially after we layer it and add a little texture, it's gonna pop up just a tiny bit, so that's gonna be perfect. That's one of the things, again, that we can't enforce enough, is just make sure that you're giving yourself some space to work when you're cutting fringe, because a lot of times what happens is you think that you're cutting right at the perfect spot, and then all of a sudden you let the hair drop and you go, oh no, that's way too short. So you can always cut more hair off, but once it's gone, it's gone. Unless you want to get some extensions out, of course. All right, so that's what I want for my end perimeter. Now, that's all we're gonna cut at natural fall, because a lot of times what we would do now is take more sections, bring it down here, but then what we're gonna end up with is something that's really, really heavy. And fringe at this point in trend is not very heavy. So instead, what we're going to do is we're still gonna work through in those horizontal sections, across the top of the head, and instead of just bringing them down in natural fall and cutting them down here, which is going to create a very heavy fringe, now I'm going to actually take a guide from underneath. Again, I'll just work through that center section first, and we're going to elevate to 90 degrees to the natural head shape. So for those of you that are Redken PBD trained, you know this is planes of the head. For most of you out there that just went to any, kind of traditional beauty school, you know it is 90 degrees to the head shape. That state board haircut kind of elevation. And what that's gonna do is keep things really round. Now you can see right away, as soon as I do that, what that does is it creates a little bit of softness and texture on the top edge without giving us such a blunt feel. Now again, we're gonna go to our corners, pick up our section, elevate to 90 degrees to the head shape. We're attempting not to over direct side to side because we don't wanna influence the shape through the over direction. We just want the guide from underneath to tell us where our finger angle needs to be. So we're doing kind of a shallow scanning sort of a technique, not a deep notching technique with that point cutting. And come to her right side, again, go here. Elevate 90 degrees to the head shape, being cautious not to over direct one way or the other. And then just scan through the points of our shears to keep things soft. Now, this is a bit of a meticulous way to cut this fringe. And we would recommend this for, again, people that you need a little bit more of a sense of precision and control as you're cutting their fringe. Maybe people with very, very thick, heavy hair, or possibly the other end of the spectrum, someone with finer hair that you still don't want it to feel too blunt. But anytime you really need that little element of control, this would be a good option for you. So I was trying to take too big of a section, so again, come back to this center area. Move back the head shape. So if you look, what we're doing is we're taking those sections back with us. So I don't want to pull all of this back, because what that's going to do, if I elevate all that front back, what I could end up with is seeing a guide in here that's going to be too short. So use a traveling guide as you move back. Just take a small piece of that previously cut section, From this side view, you'll get a sense of the elevation. So you can see I come up, I'm at 90 degrees elevation from the scalp. Now let's turn her towards you so you can see the cutting line. There's the guide from underneath. Let's get rid of a little of that excess hair. Those streamline shears make quick work of that. And we designed these shears to be really light, and they have super sculpted handles, so they just fit in your hand so nice. We've been really loving these shears. Switch to our right corner, right side. And the reason I'm moving in these kind of smaller subsections is really just so that I can keep my elevation and over direction really accurate. If I tried to take everything side to side, it's just going to over direct the outsides of the section too much. So that's why we're taking kind of smaller sections here. Working a little bit more in a precision mindset with this particular shape. So sometimes you'll see that we tend to push you guys towards, hey, just cut the darn thing. And we definitely believe in that in certain aspects, but there are times where it's really going to benefit you to slow down, take smaller sections, and be more precision about your process. And you'll learn that over time. You'll know when it's time to slow down and when it's time to just kind of take a big piece of hair and chop it off and get it done. All right, last section here. You can see now we're almost to the high point of, well, we are to the high point of the head with the back of the section there. And we're working maybe in about 1 inch wide sections or so as we move back towards that high point. So again, 90 degrees of elevation, being cautious of our over direction. Let's get rid of some of that excess hair so you can see the cutting line there. And then remove length to the previously cut guide. And just really trust the shape that you're seeing from underneath. Because a lot of times what happens in our head, we're like, well, wait, I want this to be getting longer towards the outside, but my cutting line's almost curved this way, so that doesn't make sense in my head right now. But what I have to remember is that this hair, as it falls, is distributing itself around the roundness of that head. And the hair sitting here has less to travel than the hair sitting here to get to the front of the head. So after you get that guide in the fringe, really make sure you're trusting that guide, because that's the whole purpose of being so careful about creating that guide. So what's really cool about this is that without doing much as far as texturizing, all we've done is that light notching or scanning type of texture through it. You can see how much movement and even a little bit of body we're getting into the fringe. Now, to finish a fringe, a lot of times we want to stay away from waxes and pastes. Why? Because we don't want this to get separated. And the natural oils from our scalp tend to kind of make fringe not last long anyway. It tends to get oily pretty quick. So, game changer, dry shampoo paste. So it's actually a paste and a dry shampoo combined together. Redken came out with this just recently. Well, I guess it depends on when you're watching this video. Maybe you're watching this a year later. But it's a great little product because just a little dab in there and I work it into my hands, and initially it feels like, oh, maybe this is gonna be a little bit waxy, but you gotta remember there's actually dry shampoo in there as well. So when I come through and I start to work it through the fringe, keeping it mainly more on the surface. I still don't want to get this on her skin. You know, clients don't want product right on their forehead. So I'm still mainly scrubbing this through on the upper surface. So I'm not getting it right down there where it's going to touch directly to her forehead. Excuse my back for a second. I just need to get a look at it. It's one of the things that's always difficult with doing videos is we don't have a mirror in front of us like we do in the salon, right? Yeah, I really like this. So, a little bit of dry shampoo paste. The nice thing is it's not going to get oily, gives us some texture and movement to the hair and some definition. So again, first things first, make sure you're parting off to where she naturally is going to wear her fringe Trust those natural openings as you blouse the hair. Then start with maybe a 1/2 inch of a horizontal section across. Bring that down, cut it at natural fall exactly where you want it to live, maybe a little on the long side just to be safe. And then you're gonna continue back in those horizontal sections, elevating to 90 degrees from the head shape and making sure that you're not over directing in to add extra length. Just really, really trust that guide and the shape will turn out excellent. If you have any questions on this, definitely leave us a comment below. We'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Andrew Carruthers, Education Director for Sam Villa.